Welcome, everyone, to VPOD.AI. I'm Mike, and I'm joined by Susan.
It's great to be here.
Before we jump in, a quick note that you can sponsor this show for just $25. Your message gets featured across all the major platforms: Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, you name it.
If you're interested, just visit VPOD.AI to get started today.
All right, so let's get into it. We are tackling a phenomenon that has really become pervasive in the modern workplace.
It feels like everyone is talking about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Burnout. But we're going beyond just the surface level frustration, beyond feeling tired. We're going to look at what's actually happening physiologically.
And how this state of just complete depletion can limit your potential for personal growth down the line.
So our mission today is really to synthesize the clinical features, unpack the neurophysiology behind it all,
And explain why managing this state early is so crucial for your long-term psychological well-being.
Okay, so let's establish a baseline. We all use the word burnout, but to really tackle it, we need a precise definition. Where do we start?
We should start with the World Health Organization's classification, because they are very, very careful with their language here.
And what do they say?
They define burnout as an occupational phenomenon. It results from chronic workplace stress that has, and this is the key phrase, not been successfully managed.
An occupational phenomenon,
Yeah.
so not a medical condition.
Exactly.
Exactly.
They're very explicit about that. It's not classified as a medical condition.
But wait, if this state of stress leads to measurable health problems, which I know we're getting to, why is the WHO so firm on that distinction?
Because it points to the root cause. It's fundamentally a relationship problem between an employee and their work environment.
I see. So it's not some generic anxiety disorder.
Correct. It's defined entirely by the context of work. And it's characterized by three really distinct dimensions you should look out for in yourself.
Okay, what are those three pillars?
First, the one everyone knows, feelings of energy depletion or just utter exhaustion. Second, and this is a critical shift, an increased mental distance from your job. Or, feelings of negativism, cynicism.
You start to hate the thing you used to love.
Yes. And finally, reduced professional efficacy. That feeling that you just can't perform at the level you once did. It's almost like your skills have just evaporated.
So it's like a perfect storm with pressure coming from both inside and outside your own head.
That combination is absolutely essential to understand. Burnout is an interaction between exogenous factors.
It's like external stuff.
Right. The work-related stressors that are long-term, uncontrolled, and just never get resolved. And then you have the endogenous or personal factors.
Okay, let's break those two down. What's a good example of an exogenous stressor?
Oh, think of crushing mandatory overtime, unrealistic deadlines that are impossible to meet, or maybe a chronic lack of the resources you need to even do your job properly. These are pressures being put on you.
And endogenous. What's happening inside?
Those are your internal vulnerabilities. Things like your general health, genetics, sleep habits, and crucially, your personality traits.
So you combine that uncontrolled work pressure with, say, an internal drive for perfection.
And you've created an almost guaranteed recipe for collapse.
And when you look at who's most often affected, that personality element becomes really clear, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The risk profile is not random at all.
Not at all. We see it most frequently in middle-aged individuals with what we call a type A personality.
The ambitious, highly competitive people, the ones with that intense sense of urgency who just can't let go.
Yes, and also individuals with the trait of neuroticism, which can manifest as chronic anxiety, hostility, or just emotional vulnerability.
And in certain professions, the numbers are just staggering.
They are. The one that always stands out is that approximately 50% of physicians reported symptoms of clinical burnout.
50%. Just think about that. Half.
Think about the implication for you as a patient. That means half of a profession that makes critical, life-saving decisions is struggling with chronic exhaustion. It really drives home that this isn't some niche issue, it's a systemic breakdown.
That is a sobering statistic.
Yeah.
Okay, let's pivot now to the actual physical and cognitive toll. This goes so far beyond just needing a nap.
It creates systemic damage.
Wow.
Persistent clinical burnout is associated with an increased risk of a whole host of medical disorders.
Starting with sleep, I imagine.
Yes, significant sleep impairment, difficulty falling asleep, not getting enough quality sleep, which, of course, just feeds back into the burnout cycle and makes the exhaustion worse.
And we're seeing cardiovascular disease risk go up, which makes sense, all that stress on the heart. But the material also points to features of metabolic disorders.
That's where the persistent release of stress hormones starts to impact your body's ability to process fuel. We see elevated levels of triglycerides, LDL, the bad cholesterol, and fasting glucose.
So the psychological state is actively driving physical disease risk.
By changing how you metabolize fat and sugar, yes.
Now here's where it gets really interesting for performance. The cognitive deficit. What we're seeing is impaired executive functioning.
Right. That means difficulties with memory, concentration, attention control. Basically, the very parts of your brain you need to do your best work are the first to suffer.
And that creates a devastating feedback loop for those type of personalities we mentioned.
It does. People with burnout have to invest more mental energy, a much higher cognitive load, just to solve routine problems.
Which leads to even quicker exhaustion.
And a much longer mental recovery time. So you start the next day already in a deficit.
And one of the most draining things people do at work, often without even realizing it, is something called surface acting.
Ah, yes. The emotional labor. This is when you have to suppress your real negative emotions or fake positive ones.
Like the flight attendant who has to smile genuinely at a rude passenger after a 14-hour shift.
Exactly. Or the team leader who has to project optimism in a pointless meeting when they are, internally running on fumes. That kind of emotional regulation consumes a huge amount of finite mental energy.
You're doing two jobs at once.
Okay.
The actual task and the performance of feeling something you don't.
It's like trying to run a marathon while also holding a giant fake smile. The energy for the smile is stolen directly from the energy you need to run.
So we see the symptoms, bad sleep, fuzzy focus. But what is the actual mechanism that's breaking down? Let's get into the neurophysiology.
This is where we see the physical damage. Chronic stress causes a dysfunctional regulation of the neuroendocrine stress network, specifically the hypothalamus-pituitary-adrenal axis, the HPA axis.
Give us an analogy for the HPA axis.
Think of it as your body's throttle and brake for stress. Cortisol is the main fuel. It's designed to rev up when you need to fight or flee, and then quickly hit the brakes to return to normal.
But in burnout,
that system gets stuck permanently in the on position. The dysregulation means your body's primary stress response system is malfunctioning. It never rests.
So the system designed to help you cope is now actively working against your recovery.
100%. Now, on top of that, chronic stress increases signaling in the amygdala.
The brain's fear center.
Right. Its function gets upregulated, meaning it becomes hyperactive. And crucially, this messes with the inhibitory effect that the prefrontal cortex, the rational reasoning part of your brain, normally has on it.
So the emotional volume control is broken, and the fear center is basically running the show.
Precisely. And prolonged exposure to this dysfunctional state. It leads to measurable physical, structural changes in the brain.
This is the part of the material that is truly alarming. We're talking about the literal physical reshaping of your brain.
Yes. Persistent burnout is associated with structural alterations you can see on a scan. We see a reduction in gray matter volume in critical areas.
Like where?
In the anterior cingulate cortex and the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. These are areas that are essential for executive function, rational thought, and decision-making.
So exhaustion is literally eating away at the parts of the brain we need most to solve our problems.
And at the same time, we see an increase in the structural volume of the amygdala.
It's getting bigger.
It's getting bigger. And this growth aligns perfectly with the higher levels of perceived stress and anxiety that people report feeling. It's just astonishing that a psychological state can reshape the physical structure of your brain for the worse.
Knowing this, managing burnout,
right,
it shifts from being an emotional issue to a critical health mandate. And the material suggests a really robust two-pronged approach is needed.
Yes, you have to do both. You have to enhance your personal capacity to cope, but you also have to push for positive changes in the workplace environment.
You can't just meditate your way out of a toxic job.
Exactly. You can't fix this long-term by only focusing on yourself.
Let's start with the individual then. What are the personal strategies that can actually help rebuild those depleted resources?
Two key strategies are highlighted. The first is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT.
Okay.
This focuses on identifying those negative thinking patterns and maladaptive behaviors. It helps promote more focused thinking and mental coping. And when you pair it with changes at work, it can actually lead to a pretty speedy return.
CBT makes sense for rewiring those destructive thought cycles. But what about something more meditative, like mindfulness?
Mindfulness is shown to be highly effective. It's a mental process of achieving conscious, attentional awareness, non-judgmentally observing your emotions and thoughts.
And it has a physical effect.
It does. Practicing mindfulness is associated with positive structural and functional changes in the very brain regions we just discussed, the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. It's a way to actively restore control to the rational brain.
Both of these strategies are really about building mental resilience. But resilience is so often misunderstood as, a fixed trait. You either have it or you don't.
And that's wrong. It has to be viewed as a dynamic process. The ability to adaptively recover from stressors. You develop resources for resilience through things like strong social support, having a sense of purpose, a goal-directed attitude. You have to nurture it.
Okay, let's move to the other prong of the approach, the organization. What's their responsibility here?
It's massive. They have to reduce those external factors. This includes providing managerial training so leaders can actually identify and intervene when they see signs of stress in their teams.
Instead of just demanding more.
Right. They also need to offer flexible work arrangements, remote work, flexible hours, anything to promote a better work-life balance.
And let's be clear about work-life balance. It's not about a perfect 50-50 split every single day.
No, not at all. It's about finding a sustainable integration. And on the topic of breaks, while long vacations help, the relief is often temporary if the underlying stress isn't reduced.
So you come back and walk right back into the fire.
Exactly. So encouraging periodic short vacations can be more effective to minimize fatigue buildup before a full collapse happens.
We've covered the features, the neurophysiology, the management, but I think the most powerful insight from all this is how burnout actively restricts our ability to benefit from future adversity. The barrier to what's called post-traumatic growth, or PTG.
PTG is such a critical concept. It's the positive psychological transformation that can emerge from the struggle with a traumatic event. It's not just surviving, it's changing for the better because of it.
Finding meaning in the struggle. And this growth is measured across 5 dimensions, right?
Yes, an appreciation of life, a sense of personal strength, seeing new possibilities, relating to others in a new way, and even spiritual change.
But the key finding here is just devastating.
It really is. The research shows that job burnout is a negative predictor of post-traumatic growth. Burnout essentially suppresses your capacity to find meaning after trauma because it's already drained all of the necessary internal resources.
It drains the fuel needed for that transformation. How exactly does that chain reaction work?
It follows a specific path. First, burnout diminishes your internal resources, particularly psychological resilience.
The core resource you need to cope.
The absolute core. And once that resilience is reduced, it changes your perception of new challenges.
How so?
The lack of resilience diminishes what we call positive stress beliefs. That's the idea that stress can sometimes be enhancing or motivating. You stop seeing a challenge as an opportunity to learn.
You start seeing it only as a threat that's going to break you.
Precisely. If you are constantly running on empty from burnout, you can't possibly view the next major problem as a growth opportunity.
Yeah.
You just see it as the thing that will finally deplete you completely.
So that depletion of your inner resources, your resilience and your positive beliefs about stress, that's the pathway. That's how burnout blocks the possibility of turning struggle into meaning.
It steals your future growth.
So to summarize what we've covered for you, burnout is an official occupational phenomenon defined by the WHO, stemming from unmanaged chronic stress.
It has serious, measurable neurological consequences, like a dysfunctional HPA axis and an enlarged amygdala, while the parts of your brain needed for executive function shrink.
And effective management demands a two-pronged strategy: personal coping with tools like CBT and mindfulness,
coupled with real organizational support, like flexibility and better training for managers.
Absolutely. So we saw that burnout actively diminishes both psychological resilience and positive stress beliefs, essentially eroding the inner machinery for transformation. So if true resilience is the capacity to not only recover but to grow from adversity, consider this. Is the most critical impact of chronic exhaustion that it steals your future ability to find meaning and positive change in the struggles yet to come?